Welcome again to another episode of the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Teresa J. Canada. And of course, you're wondering what happened to the podcast. Yes, well, I've been a little away from things for a while, but I'm back and I'm looking forward to more people joining in and being able to subscribe and share their views about the episodes that we've had so far and what we have on upcoming episodes that we're going to have. So I want to just to reintroduce myself for those who didn't know me, and for those who are new to the podcast, and for those who are longtime viewers, to say I'm still moving forward, and I'd like to continue to have your support through this effort that we're trying to put out here about the stories that people have and the educational aspects that take place in the northern Midwestern part of the United States in terms of education, integration, desegregation policy, psychological issues, different issues that relate to being in the North and how it all impacts education. So what I'd like to talk about now for this brief session is to talk about some of the topics that are going to be discussed moving forward for the next couple of episodes. And I want to focus in on something that's happened, relevant stuff that's happened specifically. As you all probably know, that this was the 7th anniversary year of the Brown versus Board of Education decision from 1954. And I had a previous guest who talked about his father's role in the court case for that Brown decision. So you can always go back and reference that to get more information about the decision. And so we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about something a little about the 7th anniversary. Where are we now from 1954 to this point, and the impact of the Brown decision and what happened in other parts of the country, specifically in North and Midwest as a result, and what's happening now, and some ideas about what may be happening in the future. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. I mean, that's one of the first topics I want to just mention to you. Another topic is, whether or not did, in fact, integration and desegregation result in better opportunities for Black and Brown children during the post-1954 decision, specifically in New York City, which I did research on in terms of the New York City public schools from the 1960s. And the book talks about my experience along with my classmates who went through a process in the mid-19th century. So that's another topic I think it's important to think about, because there's a lot of things going on now in the public schools. Different kinds of ways in which people get public schools, vouchers, charter schools, all those kinds of things are discussed. I have a previous guest who talked about what happened in the state of Connecticut and what they did, which was like the Brown case on a state level, which is part of the state Supreme Court case in Connecticut, the Chef O'Neill case. So, and that was in the late 1980s, beginning of the 1990s. So we've gone someplace, but we still have a lot to go. So I want to just make sure that we touch upon topics that may be relevant, and then people can have their aspects and about what they think about it and learn something about it, and just continue to do some research on their own. That would be part of what the goal of this particular podcast is, to let people just, give them some information and you can take it and run with it. So that's another topic. Also, having been a New York City person, and I mentioned oftentimes in my book about the role of Black and Puerto Rican children who were basically, because of migration from Puerto Rico in the mid-1950s and beyond, that the large number of students who were of Latino background were Puerto Rican who came into the New York City public schools during the 1950s and 1960s, and many of them were part of that process. So I'm hopefully going to be able to have somebody on to talk more about that relationship and the opportunities for Black and Puerto Rican children, and did the education result in better opportunities for Black and Puerto Rican children, and what that relationship was with Black and Puerto Rican children. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the role of higher education, which we've not talked much about, because after all, many of the people who did attend elementary school in the North during the 1960s and 70s, many of them did pursue higher education. So I'm going to take some time to talk about, did the desegregation in the North and Midwest lead to better access to higher education for Black and Brown children in the United States of America? So that would be another interesting topic that I want to have a discussion about and share some views, my views about it, and possibly views from a guest speaker, if possible, about that person's experience. Another topic that I want to talk about in the next couple episodes, I should say, not series, a couple episodes. Well, it's not a series yet, but anyway, it's just episodes at this point, is the parents' role. We don't talk much about parents and their role in the education of their children. I do have some information in my book about the parents' role for the brown and black girls who desegregated in New York City schools at PS6. I talked about that briefly, and it's a very important part of that relationship, because you got to think about it. Parents, they're children, so their children don't choose themselves to attend these schools. The parents are the basic main influences in terms of deciding if their children are going to, do they want their children to attend these schools or not, and what kind of information do they have to share. So I'll be talking a little bit about the parents' role in the school desegregation integration experience in New York City, in particular during the 1960s and beyond, and maybe currently now what's happening with parents. And my experiences of talking to parents and working with parents, and also my research about a parent's role in the education of their children. So that's another topic that I'll be talking about specifically in some upcoming episodes. Another topic I want to talk about is early childhood education, in particular, the policies that take place or have taken place in in New Jersey and the federal government. So we'll talk about that, and I'll hopefully have a guest who can talk specifically about the role that that person has had in positions in New Jersey in terms of looking at early childhood policies that impact children throughout the state of New Jersey, and that impact the early childhood focus around the United States through the federal role and what they played in terms of what was happening with early childhood education, and discuss the significance of that, which of course, it's very important, more so now than ever. And so those are some of the topics I'd like to have in terms of my discussion. The other topics I'd like to talk about relate to some of the guests I'm hoping to have on the show. So this relates to some of the topics I just mentioned already. And one of them is dealing with also the psychological, because I just said interesting enough, I did mention in a previous intro that I would have someone talk about psychological points of view as a role of desegregation and integration and desegregation of schools. And I'm still, looking for someone to do that. I have a person in mind, but I haven't been able to connect with that person. Hopefully I'll be able to connect with that person pretty soon to have that person share their view. But I did have someone who happens to be cognitive scientist, I think, who will be talking about that. And we'll see how that goes. But basically, I want to talk about a person who's had experience in Massachusetts in public high school during the 1970s. There's also a upcoming guest who's going to talk about her new book about Black history in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And part of that deals with issues of a specific high school that was instrumental in Philadelphia schools at that time. So she'll share that information. But she'll share a lot about the Black experience, history in Philadelphia as a whole. So that's important to know, because that's another, of course, Pennsylvania is another northern state. If you didn't know that, it is. So I want to talk about issues that take place in those schools as well. Now, another interesting guest is going to be talking about a Chicago benefactor who helped establish schools for Black children throughout the South. And I thought that was significant because the person didn't do that in the North, but they did in the South. And I don't know, the person who I'm asking to interview for this process and talk about this is that it's going to tell us why and who was involved in making those decisions as to the significance of the importance of having schools for Black and brown children in the early 1900s and latter parts of the 19th century. So this is really important to know, because it took someone from the North, not just at South, somebody from the North who actually decided to establish schools for Black children in the South. So that person's going to come and talk a little bit about their experience. Also, we have a person coming in talking about the Cincinnati Public Schools. This is a woman who she spent several years as a teacher, administrator, and became eventually the superintendent of schools in Cincinnati. So she has a huge span of experience in education, and she's going to talk about her experience being a Black woman superintendent of schools in the Midwest. And that would be a really interesting insight to hear her point of view about what it was, when she was superintendent, and since what's happening now, and her understanding of what's happening now in terms of role of schools, and how she felt that her experience was to the state, to talk about it today. The other person I'm trying to get to talk about, going to be talking about issues that they had in Massachusetts, as I mentioned before, and also, like I said, a cognitive scientist who will be talking about her research and also her personal experience of a situation that took place with her when she was in high school. So overall, I'm looking forward to people tuning in and getting some insight, again, about different stories and different books that people can purchase that relate to issues that are relevant to the podcast, and to get your insight about some of the things that we're talking about, and some feedback. I'd like to hear some more feedback from people about what their thoughts are about some of the things that we're doing here in the podcast. And also some interest, if you have, in participating. If you are, look me up. You can contact me. Go to my website, and it has my email address, www.silkstonkingsisters.com, and you'll see information about me, and also information about how to contact me and via my email. So other than that, that's really just a quick introduction as to what I'm looking forward to doing moving forward with the podcast. And I thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing. Tell your friends, family, and those that may not be friends and family, you can tell those people too. And that's all good as well. So I'm encouraged by the feedback I have been receiving so far, and I look forward to more positive feedback. And if you have some topics you'd like for me to discuss, please share those comments as well, or send me an email, and I can follow up on some of those things, and we'll see where we're going. So thank you again for taking the time out of your day, evening, night, wherever you are around the world, around the country, around the state, around the city, to check out Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. And again, I'm your host, Dr. Teresa J. Canada, and I look forward to connecting with you soon about some of the topics I just discussed. So other than that, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.